Subnautica Fauna Cladogram Part 2. Hello. In this part, we will talk about the basal bilaterally symmetrical animals, most of which fall into the clade Xenoverma, with only two known organisms being outside that clade. The reefback leviathan is the most unique of all Subnautica's creatures. In fact, it looks more like something Wayne Barlow would make than Rees? Than Alex Rees, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I was actually going to give it a group name that references Wayne Barlow, but I didn't know what suffix to give it, due to knowing next to nothing about taxonomy. The second most unique bilaterally symmetrical creature is the trivalve. I was actually going to place it as a sister clade to Monophthalma due to the placement of its eyes, but then I noticed literally everything else about it. The combination of arthropod mandibles and mollusk-like fins is completely unique to this animal. Still, it's not as strange as the reefback, so I think it is more closely related to Xenoverma than the reefback is to either. So now we move on to the biggest bilaterally symmetrical clade, the Xenoverma, which as the name suggests, are defined by being worm-like, or at least their latest common ancestor was. These are further separated into two main branches, the Xenochordata, which are this planet's version of chordates, and the Segmentosoma, which are named as such by their segmented bodies. For now we will focus on the Segmentosoma. Of those, the ice worm is the most basal member as it is literally just a big worm. Any derived features it has are adaptations for its lifestyle. Like many burrowing animals, it has a thick shell and seems to be eyeless. Its mouth parts seem to have evolved independently from other Xenoverma, possibly by modified sensory organs. And as for the heated horn, I can't actually think of a way to justify it. This is not how evolution works, at least not outside of Monster Hunter. So let's move on. Originally I was going to put the rock crab and the jelly ray as even more basal than the ice worm, but I think they're actually more derived. They resemble tardigrades, which evolved from velvet worm-like ancestors that later lost many of their ancestral traits in favor of becoming smaller and simpler. So I believe that these animals went down a similar evolutionary path. Moving on to the more derived segmentosomes, we have the lava larva and the shadow leviathan. In a clade I decided to call Volvastoma, spelled with an O after the snail, because that's what their mouth reminds me of, the shell of a snail. I'm sorry guys, but look at them, what other defining feature do you see? How else were you going to name them? Well, that's the only thing that stands out. Okay, to be fair, there is one more thing that stands out about them. The Shadow Leviathan seems to have 6 eyes, in 3 pairs. No other creature in the entire game, to my knowledge, seems to have 6 eyes. This is important because there has never been an instance of an animal that evolved extra eyes, but there have been many instances of animals evolving to lose extra eyes. So either the Volvastomes evolved their eyes independently from all other segmentosomes, or their common ancestor had 6 eyes as well. Τι γλωσσοδέτες κάθομαι και λέω. Evidence for the latter may or may not exist in the next clade, the Gnathophora, segmentosomes with jaws like those of vertebrates, as this is where the sand shark and its prehistoric relative, the ancient skeleton, are classified. If we look at the skull of the ancient skeleton, we see 3 pairs of holes, 6 in total. From the bone alone, we can't tell if the front holes are eye sockets or nostrils, and the sand shark doesn't really help because it has 4 eyes and 0 nostrils, so it is still up in the air as far as my research can tell. But evidence can go both ways. As the name suggests, the Xenarthropoda are the most arthropod-like of all of Subnautica's clades, but that's an oversimplification, as they have a combination of unique, defining traits. 2 pairs of eyes, insectoid mandibles, and multi-jointed crustacean limbs. In fact, I was going to classify the lily paddler as a plagiostome, more on those on the next part, before noticing it had limbs like a xenarthropod. I do, however, consider it the least related to the other xenarthropods, as it hasn't undergone any carcinization. And yes, not even aliens are immune to becoming crab. Ironically though, the rock panzer is the least carcinized of them all, despite being the one that looks the most like an actual crab. That's because carcinization isn't exactly turning animals into crabs, it is turning long-bodied, long-tailed animals into short-bodied, nearly tailless ones. And the rock panzer is a rather lobster-like animal, with a somewhat long body. Still more crab than alien though. The fully carcinized aliens are split into 2 major groups, the domed crabs and the flat crabs. Of those, the domed crabs are the least crab-like, having the shape of an octopus more so than a crab, but their features are still very much like those of an arthropod, or xenarthropod in this case. This clade contains the crab squid and the hive mind, 2 species that are clearly closely related, but filling different ecological niches. The crab squid is a large solitary hunter, while the hive mind is, well, a hive mind. The flat crabs are the most carcinized of all animals on the planet, and they also only have 4 legs. The cave crawler and its close relative the blood crawler use all 4 of those legs to walk, but the sea treader leviathan has modified the front legs as antennae, and instead walks on its rostrum, I think, on its modified mouth part. While on that topic, I am not sure what that mouth is used for. My best guess is that it's using it to pierce and eat anchorpods, those bubble things that exist in the Grand Reef. And that's all for the segmentosomes. Next time we will talk about the xenochordata, starting once again from the basals and going to the more derived in later parts. See you there, or in an unrelated video if I decide to post something else in the meantime. We'll see, I'm not sure yet. Goodbye for now. The flat crabs are the most...